welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about binge eating. I know a lot of you are return subscribers and you're familiar with who I am because you're subscribed and you watch my videos, even though they're shitty, because you are the best ever. But for those of you who are new here, my name is Jordan and I'm talking about binge eating today because it's a problem I've struggled with a lot since losing 130 pounds. I mentioned binge eating quite a bit on my channel. However, I don't have a video dedicated to it specifically. A lot of you guys have asked. So I decided I would just film it, kind of talk about my own experiences, and I guess give some advice on how you guys can better deal with it. Obviously, I have not solved it for myself, so I don't have the answer, unfortunately, but hopefully me just talking about it will kind of help you cope if you are dealing with similar issues. So when I have problems in life, whether it's binge eating or whether it's something else in my personal life, I always try to approach it very rationally. This can be very difficult. I know a lot of us, myself included, are sometimes guilty of jumping to conclusions, kind of assuming the worst, thinking it's the end of the world, not really, you know, looking at it for what it truly is. And I feel like that's something I struggled with a lot when I first started binge eating because, like I said, if you are familiar with my story, you know that I didn't binge eat to gain weight. It was more of a problem with overconsumption. I didn't start actually binge eating until after I lost weight. So when I first started binge eating, it was something I had never experienced before. So in that moment, I was kind of like, fuck, like something is very wrong, and I kind of blame myself a lot for it. Well, now that I understand what binge eating is and that it's a problem that a lot of people struggle with, I'm much more capable of viewing it in a rational manner. Okay, so how can we deal with binge eating in a rational manner? The thing that I like to remember is that even though it seems like the end of the world, even though it seems like all progress is lost, like I'm hopeless, I'm helpless, all this stuff, I just try to remember that it's actually not that big of a deal. And I know a lot of you are probably like, what do you mean? And obviously I'm not saying that binge eating disorder is not a big deal. It is a big deal. It's a disorder. I think that if you need help, you should reach out for help. And I think that all of us who struggle with it should, you know, work towards combating it and conquering it every single day if we can. However, what I'm saying is that a binge in itself is not that big of a deal. When we binge, like I said, we kind of spiral. We kind of say everything's ruined, like it's just terrible. We're gonna gain all our weight back. We're gonna ruin all our progress. And that's just not the case. Binges usually do less harm than you think they will. Obviously, yes, it does derail progress, but it doesn't define what's gonna happen. Like, just because you binge eat doesn't mean you're not gonna lose weight in the long run. Even if it derails you for a week, like in 3 months from now, you won't even be thinking about it. And that's something that's very important to remember, is when you binge eat or when you struggle with any type of disorder, you just have to remember to get perspective on the issue. So yes, binge eating is something you struggle with. Yes, binge eating is something I struggle with, but when I put it into perspective of the world, when I say to myself, Jordan, will you give a fuck about the fact that you just binge ate like in 3 years from now? And I'm like, oh wait, no, like this is not a defining moment in my life. This does not define my life. This really isn't that big of a deal. When I tell myself that, it is much easier to cope with. Like, just get perspective, read the news, go for a walk, watch a TV show, just get out of your mind. Try to remember that in the grand scheme of your life, binge eating is very insignificant and it's something that you should not let occupy your entire life. That's what I try to do. I try to remember that everyone struggles with something, and just because I'm struggling with binge eating, that doesn't mean that, you know, my life is gonna be terrible. Honestly, all I'm saying is just don't take shit so seriously. Like, and I'm trying to be careful when I say that, because I'm not saying you should ignore a disorder. Obviously not. Like, I think you should get help for it. But don't let a small hiccup like define your day, define your week, define your life. This is something that took me a while to understand and realize. I used to be someone who jumped to conclusions really quickly. Or I used to be someone who took a really small inconvenience and turned it into something much bigger. When I was in school, oh my God, when I was in school, if I got a B, it was the end of the world. I was like, no. And I would let shit like that get to me. And then one day I realized, wait a second. In 4 years from now, will you care about the B you got on that paper? And then I was like, no. Just like in 4 years from now, I will not care that I had a little hiccup in my weight loss journey because I struggle with food. And I know it is different. I know a disorder is much different than a grade, but the best thing you can do when you struggle with a disorder is just wake up every day and try to conquer it. And when you mess up, just wake up again and try to conquer it. Because the second you let that little hiccup define you, that's when you're gonna start seeing stretches, like long stretches of days, of weeks, of like constant cycles of binge eating, and that's like not what you want, obviously.
My camera died. How convenient.
Okay, so after you get some perspective, after you kind of accept that, listen, it sucks, but it's gonna be okay, that's when you wanna start kind of planning on how to make sure it doesn't happen again. So I would say that the most important thing you can do after you binge eat is to immediately go back to your regular habits. What I mean by that is the next day, instead of waking up and restricting in an attempt to kind of undo the damage you did, just go back to your regular eating schedule. Eat the amount of calories you usually aim to eat. And I think this is really important because I know the mindset a lot of us will get into is, wow, I just ate, let's say, 7,000 calories. Like I just binge ate 7,000 calories. That means for the next 2 days, I'm gonna eat next to nothing to undo that damage. But what happens when you get into this mindset is that you just kind of perpetuate the cycle. You just keep it going. I am someone who strongly believes that binge eating is linked in some way or another to restriction. I think I struggle with binge eating because I over-restricted when I was losing weight. So I just think it's very dangerous and just a very terrible decision to go straight back to restricting, because even if you don't restrict, or sorry, even if you don't binge immediately, I think that it's inevitable that you eventually will again. Just try to commit to doing better the next day. Try to commit to going back to your regular habits. Go to bed. Try to get enough sleep. Getting an adequate amount of sleep helps regulate your hormones. Just go to bed in a healthier mindset and hope that the next day will be better. And honestly, it won't always be better. I've had binge like episodes that have lasted weeks, and it's just weeks and weeks of doing better, falling off, doing better, falling off. And all you can really do in these situations is just try again, because like it's when you give up that it takes over. If you never give up, it will never fully take over. And I believe that if you never give up, it will eventually regulate itself. And obviously I'm still struggling with it. I've been struggling with it like over a year now. But the reason why, like I've said before, I have not gained all my weight back is because even if I binge eat, I will get back on track. And yes, usually I will binge eat again, but at least I'm constantly going back and forth of trying to like do better. Like I will never give up just because I struggle with it. Something else I always like to do after I binge eat is actually start my day off with a really good workout. I know this isn't gonna be for everyone, but for me personally, I find that when I have a really good workout in the morning, I am less likely to eat like shit throughout the day, because I'm like, oh hell no, I just busted my ass for 2 hours. I just sweat a muff, man. I am not eating poorly and undoing the work I just did. Obviously, if you're dealing with strong urges of binging, that's not always gonna work. Like sometimes it doesn't even work for me, but I find that if I start my day well, if I eat a good breakfast, I like exercise, and I just start the day on a positive note, it is less likely that I will binge. Because for me, binging is much, it's very much like a spiral effect, and it takes one bad thing for everything to go to fucking shit. So if I started off strong, my day will be better. Something I do want to note, however, is when I say start your day with a really good workout, I'm not saying go to the gym for 6 hours and try to undo the damage you did when you binge ate. That is just causing a whole entire issue on its own. That is a form of purging, if you did not know. And that is just going to once again create a very toxic mentality when it comes to food. Go to the gym, get a really good workout in. It'll make you feel better, you'll sweat it out, and I think it'll just set a really good mood for the day. Okay, so another thing I will try to do when I'm trying to recover from a binge is I will try to avoid placing myself in a triggering environment. And what I mean by that is I won't surround myself with food that I know I'm kind of around. I'm not gonna put myself in a bakery, for example. Even in terms of my own house, I will not keep any bingeable food in the house for a few days to a few weeks after a binging cycle, just because I know that that's kind of when I'm most vulnerable to overconsumption. So I will literally buy just my healthy food and eat it. I will try to cleanse my body of all the shit I put in it, and until I feel comfortable enough to actually bring, you know, like treats back into my house. Yeah, what am I saying? I'll just go back to basics for a bit. I'll keep healthy food in my house. I won't go places where I know I'm gonna feel super vulnerable. I just find that that is super helpful for me, because I tend to get into that like fuck it mentality where if I've already fucked up for 3 days prior, I'm like, what's a fourth day gonna matter? So for me, I just try to like clear all the bad shit away from me, at least for a few days, because in those few days, I'll kind of get the self-control to not binge on that stuff again. And that's typically what happens. you will see sometimes I won't have any sweets in the house because I'm like, oh no, that's bad news bears. While other times I'll keep whole cakes and I'll eat like one slice every fucking day. So for me, it goes in waves, but that's something I'll definitely avoid after binge eating, and that's just being surrounded by foods that I know are dangerous to be around. So something you'll also notice after binging is that you're probably gonna be a lot, or you're probably gonna feel a lot hungrier than you usually do. That's because your body is just used to, you know, over consuming. It misses it. It wants a king's feast and not a peasant meal. Like you have been feeding it with your regular calories. So what I tend to do in those situations is I eat a lot of volume food. So I will up my vegetable intake. Like I will eat a shit ton of broccoli because broccoli has a lot of volume for very few calories. And that's just to like have volume in my stomach, to kind of keep my stomach full, because that's the feeling that you often crave when you want to binge eat. So I'll just eat a lot of vegetables, I'll drink a lot of water, and I'll just try to keep myself as full as possible, because I start to struggle when I start feeling hunger. And if I'm in a binge cycle and I'm hungry, a bitch is gonna eat. So I just try to stay full at all times. You also want to keep your mind busy when you're trying to recover from a binge. I like to go on walks. I like to hang out with friends. It's really dangerous for me when I'm left alone in my own house because all I can think about is food. If I am not doing something and I have nothing to like put my effort into or put my focus on, I will most likely binge. So I like to go out with friends. Like I'm like, let's go to a movie, because even at a movie, I'm not focusing on food. Or I'm like, let's go hang out, let's go for a walk, let's just go talk. And that just keeps my mind off binge eating. Also just going for a walk, like even though I'm by myself and I'm still left to my own thoughts, at least I'm out of the house and I'm away from food. And like I said, if I work out or I exercise a lot, or I feel like I did a really good like job at exercising that day, I'm less likely to binge because I don't want to undo that progress. So if I go for a walk, it's just adding more exercise to that day for me to be like, no bitch, you did not walk 25,000 steps so you could eat 18 Twinkies. And I guess the last thing I wanted to say is just remember you're not alone. And I say this in a lot of my videos, but I think it's just a really good message to get out there. A lot of us tend to forget that people struggle with shit all the time. And when we forget that, it's very isolating and we think it's the end of the world and we think that we're just destined to be a failure. That is not the case. People struggle with shit every day. You are not alone. Just remember, I struggle with binge eating. If you're binge eating right now and you're like, fuck, like I'm a failure, and you're like, have all these negative thoughts, remember that I binge eat all the fucking time. Like we could be binging at the same time. And while I don't think that's an excuse to, I guess, justify your binge eating at all, of course, it's at least gives you peace of mind knowing you're not alone. And if I'm working through it every day and I'm trying to better myself every day, you can too. And one day we will all be freed. We will all be freed. I know we will. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye. Subscribe, like, comment. Bye.
Fuck your Bible.